Welcome to, essentially, the entire reason why I wanted to make tOdi Secrets. It is finally time to cover the stupidest, most ambitious tOdi episode there is, and the story begins on August 9th, 2023. Okay, so just a few random details that I wanted to point out because they're fun. The fire and ice light is back here. I totally forgot to turn it off. I meant to turn off all the lights after the whatever. It will frequently shine behind a number of these characters, but specifically it's supposed to be aimed basically right at Hammer. It's not really illuminating her, but there's a lot of shots where you can see it, flickering around, pulsing, doing its thing in the background when the camera's focused on Hammer. I just thought that was cool because even though this was kind of just the light that I used for the whole Children of the Cardboard scene, I specifically kind of think of it as her light now because I really utilized it heavily to make her look intimidating in that scene. So just a little Easter egg. Also, there's a green light back there. Of course, there's another green light here, but the green light behind them, sort of hidden behind Crane Terrorism, is aimed basically right at Pillywig, and it's kind of low-key, supposed to make it seem like Pillywig, brings the energy of his dimension wherever he goes. The blue light that I'm using for the rift is sort of noteworthy because it's the only time I've used a blue light for anything in this series, I think. But yeah, we also have the prison guards from Alcohol Traz, if that wasn't obvious. This is just, boxes I took apart, if that wasn't more obvious. And then we have various mic stands and things, and tacks and tape holding up all these sides. I guess this is the final fun thing I'll mention for now. It's, of course, partially torn down at the moment, but this is my first ever 360-degree set for tOdi, where there's 4 walls. There are gaps in them for me to get through, but that way I can shoot from any angle, because I very quickly realized that I'm going to have to break the 180 rule a lot in this scene. So anyhow, that was my solution for that. Okay, so day 1 of the 3-day Entropy shoot is completed. Here is the state of everything. It's about 11 o'clock at night. Hammer has just been stabbed by the ass of Longinus. Little Easter egg is that Jane has already untied herself. That happened a couple shots ago. The microwave hopefully turned out pretty good. I did decide to shoot that in order with everything else, even though I could have just shot it whenever. That cardboard is falling apart, but it's okay. Maybe the rift is growing unstable over time. It's fine, no one cares. Pretty good, feeling pretty good. Yay. I just got up the next day, and all I have to say is that I am never shooting on hardwood floors ever again. I am genuinely so sore. You would not believe how much physical effort I was apparently putting into just crouching down and sitting my hips and my tailbone and my legs and my lower back. Oh my gosh. I don't know how I didn't see this coming. I did spend 6 straight hours yesterday just crouched in awkward positions on a hard floor. I gotta get some food. Okay, I've acquired pants and a pillow, and I think that's gonna make today a lot more. To be clear, I wasn't pantsless I had shorts on yesterday. That part might not have been obvious. Okay, it's really late, and I should just be shooting now, because we still have a decent amount to do before we call it a night. But I just have to point out just the utter chaos. The Chinosaurs and most of the characters are just strewn about chaotically because we're right in the middle of the battle, and whatever I'm not, immediately shooting a shot of, I don't care. So stuff is just lying wherever. Imagine X corpses galore. We have this. Beautiful. Blizzard's up there. Everyone is dead. Look at the state of this room. It is 11 o'clock at night. We started filming around 2. Camera still in place, resting on top of a Puget Sound region bird guide. Amazing. I think I'm gonna include that as the book that Robert is reading in the after credits. This is the most insane thing I've ever done. I woke up this morning, I mean, I took some footage, but if it wasn't already clear, I was so sore and so tired. I had a massive? Yeah, that's what I did. I had a massive sugar low earlier in the day, not too long after when I last filmed a little update. And so, yeah, point being, this is ridiculous. I have abused myself for you people. Did I sleep as well as I wanted to? No. Did I get up as late as I wanted to? No. But we gotta get this done before about 1. It's almost 11 right now in the morning. I think we can do that. I don't know where I put my pillow. We are done. It is just after 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and there's Cryo all alone. Absolutely insane. Nothing. These are the only words I'll say, and then I need to get to teardown. Nothing could have prepared me for the magnitude of filming this scene.
That is all the behind-the-scenes footage I have to show you, but I should also emphasize the fact that this entire shoot took about 18 hours in total, which is something. Our first proper tOdi secret comes in the form of me re-recording some classic voice lines for the last time segment in this episode. I debated pretty heavily whether or not I should do this, and ultimately I prioritized consistency of audio fidelity and the characters' voices in the episode. But yeah, I think every voice line from about episode 8 back is re-recorded. A quick note on scripting this video. I really wanted to pay off every setup, tie up every loose end, call back to as many running jokes as possible. I'm sure I failed, I'm sure I forgot something, I'm sure I missed a few opportunities, but I did try my hardest. And this was all somewhat a direct reaction to Dinosaur Island Season 4, a project of mine which somewhat infamously concludes very abruptly. Jane is victorious. Where the fuck's the rest of it? And ever since Dinosaur Island Season 4 was released, I have really been prioritizing falling action and epilogue in my stories. And so, Entropy ended up being about half climax and half falling action, which I think is cool. Moving on to our usual chronological analysis of the episode. Pretty much immediately we have a mistake, which is fun. The interrogator breaks the fourth wall. Script line... Which is something, barring special circumstances, Blizzard and the gods are only ever supposed to do. So yeah, that's just a straight-up mistake. I somehow missed it. Then Darkclaw removes his cloak, which was just a plain black t-shirt, and it was way too large, to be honest. So it was always just, like, clumped up in a pile behind him. Then we get Nigel's death, which was, something which had been on my tOdi bucket list for a while. That being killing off a fairly major character literally just as a gag. And yeah, his death has no tangible effect on the plot or the other characters. It's literally just for a laugh, and I do think that's fun. This scene also sees the final installment of the scalpels running gag. Scalpels! Nigel, no! Grant actually confirms that Nigel is his son. This is, of course, canonically a fact in Dinosaur Island, but had never been confirmed nor denied in tOdi, nor had it really had any relevance, but I did decide to confirm it here. Darkclaw's pistol comes from a figure of Kobeni from Chainsaw Man, and this scene also features Grant quoting himself from a previous episode.
Kinda weird we never brought that up before. It's kinda weird we've never brought that up before.
A few more fun secrets. Katie mentions the Baba Yaga, which is a cryptid with a fantastic name. Pillywig quotes Patchface, a character rather Pillywig-esque in and of himself from the Song of Ice and Fire novels.
Under the sea, the mermen feast on starfish soup, and all the serving men are crabs.
Katie uses the name Jimithid, which is an inside joke so obscure I'm not even sure my friends would get it. and they are the target audience. We get a "Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared" reference in the form of Jane just full-on name-dropping the show, and the Mollusk of the Nut World is a reference to a BionicleSaurus video you can no longer watch, but some of you may remember it. Then we move on to the rumbling and the arrival of Hammer's family. Most of these Imaginext dinosaurs come from my own childhood, but the Slappy Allosaurus and the Splitter Angel Sauropod were kindly donated by my good friend Aiden, along with this Triceratops named Archibald. Back in the summer of 2022, when me and a few other friends were visiting Aiden in Tennessee, he had at the time already shipped me the Allosaurus and the Sauropod, and we were going through the remainder of his Imaginext collection. At some point we were all hanging out, and I was playing around with this Triceratops, and I made him say the line from the episode.
God damn it, Archibald! Not again!
In doing so, I accidentally created a new character, and so I flew across the country back home with Archibald in my backpack. This joke about a 100% sales tax is another Chainsaw Man reference, and also worth mentioning is this royalty-free man yelling sound effect.
For people to have orgasms!
I've mentioned it before, I love using recognizable royalty-free sound effects in tOdi, and I actually used this specific sound effect in one of the short films in my series Mind Dive. I used it unironically as a man yelling, and shortly after I somehow became aware that this sound effect is used in a lot of memes, and it sounds kinda stupid, and it was very fun to reincorporate it comedically in tOdi. Then Hammer Titan happens. Her very first line of dialogue is, of course, the answer to the question on which she left us hanging at the end of episode 14.
Do the balls go in the condom too? The balls don't go in the condom.
And it's also worth pointing out that Hammer Titan was fairly explicitly foreshadowed in episode 14, when Hammer literally says that this is not her final form. This scene was really fun to film. It was really enjoyable, you know, amping it up from household tools to household appliances. And this scene is probably also a good time to mention how much work went into voice acting for this episode. This episode contains about 400 individual voice lines, and that's just the keeper takes. I don't know how many outtakes there are, but I would guess around 1,000 to 2,000. And much of Darkclaw's passionate yelling in this scene is some of my favorite VA I've ever done. The ass of Longinus is of course a reference to the lance of Longinus from Evangelion. The sound effect for when the ass impales Hammer is the sound of the lance being thrown in the original anime. And the sound effect for the sauropod splitting in two is the sound effect of Israfel turning into two angels after being cut in half. The Price is Wrong is a reference to a Periphery song, which of course itself is a reference to The Price is Right. And the final secret for this scene is that you can actually see that Jane has untied herself several shots before revealing her identity. At 8:58, we can see her ropes in a pile on the floor. Then Jane reveals her secret identity as BTJ, and this was a scene I was very much looking forward to. We'll talk more about Jane later, though. This scene features a pretty climactic moment for a #Gady, kind of a nice, more serious moment between these two characters as a way of showcasing their friendship up until this point. And this scene also features the final purpose for all of my Chinasaurs. For so many years, I've been keeping around, so many of these old dinosaur toys with no brand name and nothing but made in China printed on their bellies. As I speak to you now, all of these Chinasaurs have found a new home at my local Goodwill, but it was really, really fun giving all of these toys, many of which appeared in Old Dinosaur Island, one final moment of glory. Some fun details include Nigel's dead body being dragged away by actually the exact same Chinasaur that got eaten in episode 8 for some reason, and this is actually the last time we ever see Nigel's body even just in the background of a shot. And at one point, there is a random Chinasaur cat fight in the background as well.
I'm sorry I got us into this mess.
Then Blizzard and Silas and Cryo show up to save the day, and this was definitely one of my most hyped moments in all of tOdi. There are actually a couple hidden voice lines by Demon Dad in this scene, and originally I wasn't gonna reveal which ones they are, but this is tOdi Secrets, so here you go.
Waggle pussies!
Jalapeno gravy, gravity, great! Back in part 2, I already mentioned how Fetish got his name and how Aiden named him and came up with the entire bit from this episode. And I like how I conclude this bit with Fetish, thinking he's heard his name just because someone used the word fetish in a sentence. Continuing on the joke from episode 15 where Silas meets his, past alternate universe version of himself. In this episode, they actually have a battle with each other. Then we get some sentimental flashbacks and Blizzard remarking on how much he loves his friends. This is actually a pretty huge moment for him, to be honest. And the clips in these flashbacks are respectively the very first shots we ever see of Silas and Grant, which is kinda cool. Then Blizzard whips a Tommy gun out of his ass and blasts the main villain literally to hell. I just got the Tommy gun on eBay. There were actually a lot of options for a miniature Tommy gun. And this one, it's made of metal. It's pretty well made, it's pretty well painted. I'm literally looking at it right now. It is currently mounted on my wall. And of course, Blizzard using a mysteriously acquired non sequitur of a Tommy gun to defeat Darkclaw is a pretty obvious JoJo reference.
Or perhaps not.
And now is probably a good time to bring up theme, because this episode, I think, is surprisingly dense with symbolism and meaning and theme. Firstly, we have Darkclaw, who is, I think, a fun encapsulation of the futility of being a self-serious character in a show which is so irreverent and which refuses to take that character seriously. Kinda reminds me of the villain in the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. I think it's a fun way of kind of recontextualizing the trope of the generically evil villain. Then we have Jane's death. She gets devoured by Hammer Titan, and yeah, it's time to talk about Jane. Jane is largely meant to be symbolic of 2017 through about 2019 era DinoTube. During that time, I was taking being a YouTuber very seriously. I was taking Dinosaur Island very seriously. It was a very different time. I was a very different person. I was a very different writer and storyteller as well. And Dinosaur Island Season 4 especially is quite reflective of all of these factors. Jane's plot and story arc in Dinosaur Island Season 4 is pretty much the same as her character arc and plot in tOdi. In both shows, she is on an epic edgelord revenge quest as a result of her mother's death. And her brother even dies during the climax of both stories as well. The difference is that in Dinosaur Island, her character arc is presented as unironic and cool and epic, and she wins. Whereas in tOdi, it's presented as simultaneously villainous and goofy, and of course, she loses. I look back at those old golden years of DinoTube with a lot of nostalgia and fondness. I met my best friends during those years. I learned so many valuable lessons. So Jane dying, Jane ultimately being defeated in tOdi, does not mean that I wish those years never happened, or that I hate those years, or I hate my past self. Not at all. Jane's death, Jane's defeat, is purely symbolic of the inevitability of change, the inevitability that we all change as writers, as artists, as people. And the message here really is just that we need to accept that change. And that message is perhaps conveyed a bit aggressively. But even though the past is behind us and change is inevitable, It's also important, I think, to be able to embrace certain aspects of one's past. During those golden years of DinoTube, I was horribly embarrassed by the early seasons of Dinosaur Island, and I would make fun of them constantly. Hammer, of course, long before tOdi, used to be a Dinosaur Island character, and she was one of the most iconic characters from season 1 of Dinosaur Island specifically. And so Hammer ultimately getting the killing blow in on Jane is important and symbolic of artistic whimsy and childlike chaos and irreverence overcoming self-seriousness and the sort of edgy storytelling of 2017 era me. And of course, this is broadly sort of symbolic, accidentally, of tOdi taking over the channel after DI. Anyhow, that concludes my self-indulgent rant about the themes of my own show. Why did I put such heavy themes in a show about toy dinosaurs? I have no fucking idea. Is it good? Is it cringe? I also don't know. I probably won't know for another 10 years, but you know, it's an encapsulation of what I was feeling artistically at a specific point in time, and maybe that's all any art really is.
Editing Bionicle here. It's also worth pointing out, before Jane is revealed as a villain, she is the most minor, least well-characterized member of tOdi's central cast. And this was thematically always meant as kind of a friendly middle finger to overpowered anime protagonist Jane from Dinosaur Island.
Back to some secrets. I got this burp by chugging an apple. The only verb I can think of is chugging. That's what I got for you. We also have this very pointed moment of setup for tOdi Gen 2, with Pillywig escaping via this rift in time and space. I knew I wanted to do more with Pillywig in the future, so I let him get away. This battle sequence has a ton of Easter eggs, so let's get into it. This sequence features the first ever uncensored use of the word fuck in tOdi, and it is a pretty impactful one.
Hey, Jane! Fuck you!
It features the return of Blizzard's theme song from episode 5, and Darkclaw even quotes Silas from that same episode.
You can't even come up with your own theme song!
Greasy lop-eared ragamuffin is a classic Demon Dadism. I have no idea where it comes from. This Chinosaur makes Minecraft donkey noises after Katie calls it a Democrat. The mother of all royalty-free sound effects, Pottery Break, shows up.
God, I love the English language.
Several of Katie's lines of dialogue are Alex Jones quotes, which just felt appropriate given Katie.
Ducks at the park are free! You son of a bitch! You piece of shit!
Another fantastic sound effect, but not a famous one, is this sound effect right here.
Park are
It's called Wounded Lemur, and it was uploaded by a very underrated YouTube channel, which I will link to down below. Silas saying Old Silas smells like sulfur and depression is kind of a light Monster Island Buddies reference. That show really loves comparing horrible smells to sulfur for some reason. Your time has left is a quote from my friend Eric. I don't remember the context, I just know it's an Eric quote. And of course we have Silas using this random ankylosaur as a weapon, which is actually a reference to a very strangely titled, almost Jurassic Fight Club-esque DI episode, Silas versus Gastonia, because the very same random ankylosaur was used as a Gastonia in said episode. And I decided to do this completely spontaneously during filming.
Here's all my Chinosaurs. Toys I've had since I was a kid, many of which were in the original Dinosaur Island. I was realizing that it hadn't properly registered with me that that was the case, and it really hit me when I had Silas beating up Old Silas with the Gastonia that Old Silas fought in Season 2 of Dinosaur Island.
Then we get kind of an obvious Infinity War reference.
Mr. Apostrophe, I don't feel so good.
And then we get a nice, more serious moment with Silas. Since his character arc was pretty much all sorted out in episode 16, there oddly wasn't much for him to do in the finale, so I wanted to make sure we at least acknowledged his change of heart.
You freaks are my only reason for living!
And we also get yet another character quoting themselves from a previous episode.
Come on! If my good looks aren't biblical, then what even could be? If drugs and self-abuse aren't the answer, then what even could be?
Then we get Blizzard's apology, which is, you know, a pretty full on making amends, coming full circle kind of moment. And yet another moment which was, undeniably tricky to balance tonally. Then Grant's sacrifice is probably one of the most solemn, serious moments in all of tOdi. I like Grant's character arc because it's kind of unsatisfying and kind of tragic. In the end, yes, he does do something genuinely heroic, but the entire show, he's trying to repair relationships and trying to make amends, and it was never really his fault that any of these relationships deteriorated. He's always trying his best, he always means well, and he never learns to stop feeling guilty, he never learns to forgive himself. In the end, he just gets what he always wanted, and that is both, triumphant and beautiful, but also really, really sad. A couple final secrets in this scene. For one, this song, it's called Circle of Life, by an artist called Whitesand, and at one time, I was planning on using this song as the final epilogue send-off music in the finale episode of Dinosaur Island Season 6. And since that is comedically unlikely to ever happen, I decided to find a new place for it during a special moment in tOdi. And we also get a reference to the barnacle goose, which is an animal very near and dear to my heart because, of course, people call me Barnacle. And it's also an animal which I discovered in person the first time I was ever meeting my friend Eric. And amazingly, I captured this moment on camera.
We have found my kin.
More than 800 years ago, people in Ireland didn't know that these geese migrated far away to breed in Arctic islands. Instead, they thought the birds began life as a goose, barnacles, and then transformed into adult birds. This is why they're called barnacle geese, because they were actually barnacles, but then they turned into heckin' geese, boy. Heckin' evolution. That's a heckin' barnacle goose. It's my family. It's so beautiful.
Then our characters return to Dinosaur Island, and it is very weird and very cool seeing them all, in the very same room, on the very same carpet, where this all began. One fun detail I like here is how Blizzard agrees with Silas after Silas makes fun of him.
Good lord, that's gonna be awkward.
Only 'cause you made it awkward, dumbass.
True enough.
It's a really minor thing, but it's something I can't imagine pre-character arc Blizzard doing. Then Red Sail shows up for the first time since episode 1. I did at one time consider including Razor's whole family in this scene as well. But I think at some point I decided that sounded like too many characters to manage, especially considering none of those characters had pre-established voices or personalities. Though that does bring me to my next point, which is that Red Sail's voice and personality are both completely different than in Thanksgiving. I did not care at all about being consistent. It had been, so long, I figured this was just a fun opportunity to completely rebuild the character. And regarding his whole personality and voice, I would say Red Sail is fairly heavily inspired by Gigan from Monster Island Buddies. Then we get Blizzard's final speech, which, along with restating the themes of change I brought up earlier, is also somewhat of a statement about the channel. But I'll talk more about that later.
Editing Bionicle here, I did not in fact talk about that later. Basically, what I was going to say is that, with tOdi's main storyline being finished, with the series essentially being concluded, there are no more huge overarching projects on BionicleSaurus. And so the channel is, in a state where I don't know when I'll upload next, and I don't know what I'll upload next, and that's okay. In fact, I've been excitedly anticipating the channel reaching this point for a long time. And so Blizzard's speech is, I suppose, kind of representative of my own internal dialogue when I was learning to accept this uncertainty. A few fun facts about the credits. First of all, Doom Dance by Gunship is my friend Aiden's favorite song of all time, which is part of the reason I chose it. The Pacoon, Katie's middle name or title, that's a reference to, well, the Pacoon, a mythical creature I think I came up with. There's also the Rossum. The Rossum, you see, is 50
50% possum, 50% raccoon, and you know, it's a bad bitch. I wouldn't want to mess with it. But the Paccoon is 100% possum, 100% raccoon, 200% your worst fucking nightmare. Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know what just came over me. I'm oddly thinking about coconut crabs. Anubis's middle and last names are just more Egyptian gods to go along with his first name. B. Owens, as Jane's middle initial and last name, is supposed to be a reference to Bloodtooth and Owen, who were her canonical parents in Dinosaur Island. Obviously, Bloodtooth is her mother in tOdi. I have no idea if her father is also a dude named Owen in tOdi, though. Like, it could just be some guy called Josh, I don't fucking know. And the final fun fact about the credits is that originally I was going to write my own original song for them, and that song was simply entitled The tOdi Rap. And the lyrics are still floating around somewhere, but I'm not gonna read them to you. That's all you get. You just get to know that at one point in time, there was going to be a tOdi rap. Then we briefly visit Hell, which I think I did this partially or mostly just to prove that these villains are all really dead and not coming back. Of course, people still think they're coming back after being eaten by Grinder. Literally, how can I convey this information any clearer to you? You know what was weird about this scene? Voicing Interrogator and Jod in the same room together, because they have really similar, really understated voices and personalities, and it really forced me to focus on, like, what are the subtle differences between Jod and Interrogator. Then Grinder shows up, and we learn that his canonical purpose is to eat the bones, specifically of people sent to Hell, to make them double dead, I guess? Yeah, Jane mentioning her lanyard and her weight gain is another Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared reference.
What? My hand. My child.
Oh, my lanyard. And my weight gain.
Well,
And there's a Doom Eternal reference in this scene in the form of Darkclaw just saying its name. Very, very creative. Then we move on to Purgatory, and we get to see Grant, Nigel, Anubis, and Razor one final time. We hear a bit about Grant's first death and his first resurrection as well. We learn that he has apparently met the gods before, which does make canonical sense, but it's also kind of funny he never brought that up. I love this random canonical detail Robert mentions of Easter being a busy day for resurrections. Like people just get more bold asking to be resurrected on Easter. I don't know, it's just kind of funny to me. Then Razor speaks for the first time since episode 10? Well, technically 14. I still hate doing his voice, but I did feel like he needed to say something before the show ended. And this is the only time in tOdi where characters outside of the gods and Blizzard are intentionally allowed to break the fourth wall. I did consider whether this final joke might be a little mean-spirited, literally telling people they've wasted their time watching the show. To be clear, I don't actually believe that. I think this show is very much worth your time. Yeah, I don't know. I guess this joke works okay. It is appropriately irreverent, I suppose. And the final tOdi secret is that the reason I gave Robert this Birds of the Puget Sound region book is because this very same book played a very important role as an improvised tripod when shooting the main battle sequence in Entropy. And there you go. This episode is equal parts absurdity and indulgence, but also theme and personal significance. This video pretty much marks the only time I have successfully finished an entire series on this channel, and it is very special to me for that reason and others. Now, of course, Entropy is not actually the end of tOdi. tOdi Gen 2 does exist, but tOdi Gen 2 is different than old tOdi. The videos are not even numbered. They aren't really episodes. They're just one-off skits. tOdi has very much gone back to its roots. And so even if Entropy isn't quite the end of tOdi, it is the end of tOdi the series. And it is the end of tOdi as it had been since its conception. And in some weird way, it's not just the end of tOdi, it's also kind of the end of BionicleSaurus. Not the end of BionicleSaurus as a concept, but the end of BionicleSaurus as it had been for about 10 years. The era of long, arcing stories and ongoing series and huge, ambitious plans is very much now a past era. And that's another reason why Entropy is so special to me, because it is somewhat a finale for, and also a tribute to, a very special decade in my life. And that is tOdi Secrets! We did it! Oh my god, I don't have to talk anymore! I would like to thank everyone from the bottom of my heart for supporting this series, for supporting the channel, Dinosaur Island, tOdi itself. Just thanks for watching, thanks for commenting, thanks for super chatting if you're one of the 3 people who's ever done that. I have no idea what I will upload next or when I will return, but I'm sure I will, so I'll see you then.